Chris Roberts. And now, here's the first round.
Live in the first round on a Sunday morning. Hopefully there's food left over from Thanksgiving. I'm pretty full myself. This is the biggest sports weekend, I think, of the year to date. There is so much stuff going on. I don't even know if we can get to it all. It's kind of like Thanksgiving for a sports fan. There's so much stuff going on the table. We've got college football, rivalries, fights, coaches that win, blowing up on the media. We've got NBA news. We've got MMA news. NFL is huge. We're going to talk about how stupid Freddie Kitchens is. All of that. And there's so much more. And I don't even know where to start. So I'm just going to throw it to my co-host right now. Chris, it's good to have you back in the town that we live in. And I know you went out of town for the holidays.
Right.
I didn't.
Right.
How was it?
It was great. It was tiresome, and I spent a lot of money.
Now, we were just talking about this before the show. I spend a lot of money on what?
You spend a lot of money on shirts.
Retro
shirts.
Retro shirts is my thing. And you spend a lot of money on?
Barbie dolls. It's not funny, man.
It's so funny, dude.
It's not funny, man.
You just lost your man card again for like the 10th time this year on the show.
That's what happens when you have little girls, man.
I know, but can't you put it off till... Did you shop on Black Friday?
No, actually, I did.
I didn't either.
No,
I'm
man.
so anti-commercialization, and if I see one more Black Friday commercial, I mean, now it's like post-Black Friday. I can't get into shopping and all that stuff, but Thanksgiving, a lot of good food?
A lot of good food, a lot of good time.
Yeah.
Took the kids out to Dave & Buster's, man. Had fun. So
Never been there.
Oh, man.
Never been there.
They actually have one coming to Gainesville. Should go check it out.
I never been there. So let's talk sports. That's what we're here to do. That's what people are tuning in right now to listen to. There was so much going on just yesterday, and it wasn't even all college football. But this week we took our Wednesday show off because of Thanksgiving, and there's so much stuff that's happened. There's the Cowboys imploding at home that we didn't even get to cover.
Right.
We've got in the NFL, we've got New England going on the road to Houston with a lethargic offense. 17 of their players are questionable with the flu. They're going on the road, and they're given 3.5 points. MMA, Conor McGregor is going to be back in Vegas. I might be out for that game. If something big happens in my life that you know what I'm talking about in the next couple weeks, I might go out to Vegas because I love Vegas. I might go out there just to be around that atmosphere because I've been in Vegas for those fights. So much stuff going on. Let's get to the biggest stories going on in the world of sports right now. We've got to start with what? The number one team in the country, Ohio State, goes into the big house, does a toe tap on Michigan's head, 56-27. Actually, the game wasn't even that close. The only way I can describe this is Justin Fields, Ohio State is elite. J.K. Dobbins should be mentioned for the Heisman, not be a front runner. And bye-bye Jim Harbaugh. This is it. You've lost 5 in a row. I don't even know what can say. Jesus coming down and intervening is the only way he doesn't get fired from that gig. If I'm a Michigan fan this morning, I'm trying to pull the gun out of my mouth, honestly. LSU squeezes by Texas A&M at home, 50-7. Nice game. They'll be ready for their SEC championship next week. Clemson, in a nail-biter, gets by South Carolina on the road. We talked a couple weeks ago about Ray Tanner having ultimate confidence in Ray Muschamp. How about 38-3 in your in-state rivalry game that you're supposed to get up for? I don't think so. Georgia gets by Georgia Tech, 52-7. They're going to take on LSU like we talked about in Atlanta next week. Chris and I will break that game down. The greatest game that I have seen this year. Alabama goes on the road to Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn, 45-48. Auburn gets it done. There are so many facets to this game, but this was the greatest game that I saw. I'm so glad I got to see it live because seeing a game like this, you can't watch every game on a rivalry weekend or a normal weekend. But I actually watched 90% of this game, and I'm glad I did. I'm going to get into that. Utah in a semi-rivalry game, 45-15 over Colorado. They'll play for the Pac-12 championship. My favorite game, Bedlam. My son Riddell loves that game. Bedlam. Oklahoma gets done against Oklahoma State on the road. Jalen Hurts, everything else that goes along with it. 34-16. The Mullet ends up 8-4 on the season. Another mediocre year for Oklahoma State. How about Wisconsin going on the road in the snow with College Game Day there to Minnesota, and it wasn't even that close. It's 38-17. Minnesota has a great season. Kudos to them. They finished 10-2, but Wisconsin absolutely looked so dominant yesterday. They were impressive. This was a Saturday that was filled with fights, snow, interstate rivalries. Jim Harbaugh probably being done. FSU loses to Florida in a rivalry game. They're still looking for a coach. Chris and I will get into that. Ohio State just blowing out Michigan. I mean, it wasn't even that close for the 5th time in a row. In sad college football news, former Ohio State wide receiver Terrell Pryor, for some reason, the day after Thanksgiving at 4 in the morning, gets in a domestic dispute, gets stabbed in the chest, was in critical condition for about 4 hours. He's now in stable condition. Chris and I are going to touch on that story. More NFL news. Cowboys lose their 2nd straight game, which isn't even the real story. The real story is they lost it at home in a must-win game, and to the Bills, which the Bills are a solid team, but this is a game that you had to have. Chris and I talked about it a couple weeks ago. I don't know what the Dallas Cowboys are on offense. I really don't know what they are. They should be dominant, especially at home, running Zeke more, who had less than 100 yards carrying. Huge meltdown in the locker room afterwards. Why is Jason Witten coming back? He's got 42 receptions, and he's just kind of a role player there. They need a lot more than that. Jerry Jones has a meltdown and says he won't fire Jason Garrett. Of course you won't, because you're a senile old man, and you need to hire me, like a lot of other teams in the NFL, to be your GM and turn things around. But you won't, because you're crazy, and you guys won't win until, for some reason by nature, you're taken out of the picture. We talked about the Patriots. They go on the road to Houston, give them 3.5. That's one of the big games of the day. They've got 17 questionable players listed as questionable for that game. Freddie Kitchens, I'm not even going to say what he did. Stay tuned. We're going to get to that in our NFL segment. It was the dumbest thing I've ever seen in the NFL this season. The dumbest thing I've seen in the NFL. Freddie Kitchens did 2 days ago. We'll talk about that. Other big games, San Francisco goes on the road, probably the marquee game of the weekend. Baltimore's given 6 points. Not a lot as far as games go that are exciting this weekend. The other one that I kind of like is Oakland going on the road, getting 9.5 at KC. I love Oakland in that game. NBA news. Yesterday, James Harden goes off and scores 60 points. The real statistic is he's done that before. He only took him 3 quarters to score 60 points against a very dilapidated Atlanta team that I thought was going to be better. We'll get into that. Who's hot in the NBA right now? The Bucks have won 11 in a row. How about the LA Lakers, who I can't stand and hate more than life itself? They've won 10 in a row. MMA news. Conor McGregor set to fight Cowboy Donald Cerrone in Las Vegas, January 18th. I might be going out for that fight. And also, April 19th, this fight is signed. Khabib Nurmagomedov is going to fight Tony Ferguson in what I think is going to be an awesome fight. Nobody has been able to penetrate Khabib's game. When it comes to fighting, it's style on style. Not the strongest guy wins. I think Tony Ferguson actually has a chance. And before I get a cup of water, Chris, what were the big things that stood out to you this week? There's so much out there.
Oh, man. Whew, you need a lot. Let's see. So
you should be telling me to take a breath right now. I'm the one that's been, I'm probably, is my face red right now?
Hey, man, you're getting there, man. You got that Irish red going on, man.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, what stuck out to me the most is Dallas. Good.
You want to start with the Cowboys?
Good grief.
Well, let's get to the Cowboys in a second. Let's start with college football.
We could go there, too.
Ohio State, how many people out there thought, Michigan would win, and how many others were in the same boat saying they could cover the spread?
I was with them covering the spread. I didn't think they'd win, though. But I was like, good grief.
Okay.
I'm driving back home, but I'm listening to the score of the game. So I'm checking the score of the game. I'm listening to the Clemson game on the way back home. So I'm like, okay, let's see what's going on with this Ohio State and Michigan game. Okay, I get the preview. Oh, it's 36 to 16. I'm like, oh God.
Yeah. Well, that shouldn't have blown you away. Okay, We could talk about Justin Fields, 302 yards, a pedestrian game for him.
Right.
What I love is 4 touchdowns, no interceptions.
Yeah.
But then we could talk about J.K. Dobbins, 31 rushes for 211 yards and 4 touchdowns. And nobody's talked about him all year for the Heisman.
Right.
Here's what I want to talk about. Shea Patterson has been on a trajectory that's not like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's not straight up. He's been getting incrementally better
right,
over the past month. He goes 18 for 43 with a QBR rating of 27.9. And I don't want to swear, but I would stake $100 that on 3 series in a row, there was at least on 3 and outs in the second half when they needed to score and keep pace with Ohio State, who was just scoring,
right,
like a pinball machine. They had drop pass, 3 and out. Drop pass, 3 and out. That was one of the worst. So we could put it on Shea Patterson, or do we put it on Jim Harbaugh? I tweeted out yesterday, the fat lady, she's at center stage.
Well, I mean, Shea Patterson is putting the ball there. The receivers, you got to catch the ball. You got to have your quarterback out.
Yeah.
You got to have him out. I mean, even if it's just putting yourself into, a better position, for second and third downs, you have to be able to help your
but
quarterback
this was bad
out.
passes, dropped passes, questionable play calling.
Yeah.
But the first 2, it's not all Shea Patterson
Right.
or the wide receivers. It's both of them being awful. No running game whatsoever. They had 75 yards rushing in the whole game. That's not going to get it at home.
Oh, wow.
At home. In a game that you have to win. I mean, this is you have to win this, and you could save your season.
Right.
And you could save your coach's job. And they absolutely laid an egg. And I think it's a combination of they laid an egg, and Ohio State is just that bleeping good. Honestly. I mean, they're just like scary good.
Well, but, really, this is starting to. Really, when you go back and look at Jim Harbaugh's career, even if you go back to Stanford, he always loses the big games. He never wins the big game. And it's just continuing to happen now that he's at Michigan. I mean, if you go back over the past 5 years, I mean, these games haven't been close.
No.
I mean, they've been like, he's been murdered every time he played that game.
Yep.
Even when he was, as the actual, not the other, he was actually, supposed to win the game. They actually got blew out. So it just makes you know, what is it about Jim Harbaugh in these big games? How about these big games?
I think about the game last year at the Shoe in Columbus, and it was the same thing. I mean, you want to talk about getting shellacked?
Exactly.
They were never in that game last year.
Right.
Never. I've got to go back 3 or 4 years to find a game where they were, actually close. Here's can I just give you a statistic about how good Ohio State is? Because we think of J.K. Dobbins, Master Teague, Justin Fields,
right.
Olive at wide receiver. They have all these talents. And we think of, Chase Young on D-end, which he kind of got neutralized a little bit yesterday.
Right.
But this is how good Ohio State's offense is as a whole. Michigan, top 15 defense in the country. They put up 56 against them. Penn State. Now, I'm talking about when they played these teams.
Right.
Penn State was a top 12 defense. They put up 28 on them fairly easily. Wisconsin was a top 10 defense when Ohio State played them. They put up 38 points on a top 10 defense. Michigan State, who hasn't had a good year,
right.
but at the time they played Ohio State, they were a top 10 defense. They put up 34 on them. 34, 38, 28, and 56. Against Big Ten defenses that were all in the top 15 at the time Ohio State played them. What do you have to say about that? That's how dominant they are. Right. It's not just – and their defense is lockdown defense.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do – there's nothing you can do about it when they have a defense that's going to give the offense the ball right back again. What can you do?
I am so impressed with Ohio State right now. It's not even funny, and I hate to say that because something in me, I don't like Ohio State. But Ryan Day has done an amazing job. When you think they're going to have a semi-down year, Urban left, culture change, new staff, it just hasn't happened. They've actually gotten better.
Yeah, I mean, but if you look at Urban's proteges, they are doing better as a whole. As a whole, I mean, you look at just look at Urban's proteges. I mean, if you look at Ryan Day, you look at the guy Dan Mullen. I mean, his proteges are actually doing well as head coaches. So, unless you know that Urban Meyer actually has something going great when it comes down to having these coaches.
Yeah, I agree. I just think I don't even know. I thought it was like Ohio State and LSU. Ohio State's got to be the number one team in the country right now. It's not anything to take away from LSU at all, but they just look so good. And how can Wisconsin next week in the Big 12 championship game, how can they stay close against such a dominant Ohio State team?
You have to be able to run the ball, and you have to actually keep that defense on the field. You have to pound the rock. That's all you can do is pound the rock and keep the ball away from that offense.
Yeah, it's got to be a ball control approach, which Wisconsin had yesterday because they were in a tight non-rivalry game, but it was home field advantage for Minnesota. On top of that, it was snowing, and they get it done 38-17 against a Minnesota team that's been really good this season. We'll get into more of that, but this is the end for Jim Harbaugh, do you think? Because we've been calling for it for the most of the season.
I think this is it. I mean,
at $8 million a year,
$8 million a
5 years in a row, you can't beat Ohio State.
You can't beat them, and
they're not developing talent.
It's not even close.
It's not even close.
It's not close. I mean, you look at that arms race in the Big Ten. Michigan is closer to Penn State than they are to Ohio State.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
I'm so discouraged because a win against Ohio State yesterday saves a season that was one of the most terrible seasons for having only 2 losses.
Yeah. And
that could have saved it. And not only could they not pull it out, it wasn't even close at home. You had to have this.
You really did. And I mean, like I said, I was coming back home and I'm listening to the game. I'm like, look at the score. I'm like, you down 20 points already. What's going on?
Oh, I can't talk about it anymore. Ohio State, all props to them. I don't even know if I'm an AD at Michigan. I don't even know what I'm thinking this morning. I mean, there's not enough vodka in the cabinet to help dull the pain of what just happened. And I'm not even a part of that rivalry, and I understand. It's just ridiculous how bad they played. Bama goes into Jordan-Hare at Auburn yesterday. 3.5-point favorite. You knew it could go either way because Auburn has a solid defense and a decent offense. The problem is Alabama's defense. Yes. It's shockingly filled with gaps. For a mediocre SEC team with a freshman quarterback to step in and put 48 on you. Now, I know that there was a pick 6 and I understand that, but Auburn was moving the ball. I mean, when Auburn would get the ball during that game, did you see the whole game?
Yeah, I saw the whole game, man. And
was that the best game in college football this year?
Best college football game I've probably seen in a few years, actually, to be honest with you.
That had everything.
It had it all.
You had controversy, you had great hits, you had the offenses going up and down. We had a pick 6, we had a kickoff taken for 6.
Right.
And close the whole time. Rivalry game, so much on the line. I mean, it was just an awesome game. I had Bama minus the 3.5. And Mac Jones, I would say, had a good game. He goes for 335 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He wasn't even the real story for Alabama. The real story for Alabama was Jalen Waddle, who had 4 receptions for 93 yards and 3 touchdowns, plus a kickoff run back. Right. But I think the real story for Alabama is their defense. And it's like, where were you? That tryptophan from the turkey was kicking in way too much to allow Auburn to score 48 on you.
Well, again, when it came down to that defense, Alabama was missing their linebacker. Alabama's defense, it always keys in on the linebacker being the quarterback of their defense. They're lacking in linebacker play this year. And then on top of that, when you go back, you look at that game, the fact that the quarterback gave Auburn 14 points was another issue.
Oh, the one from the 3-yard line on the semi-screen / fade off, right. And it goes off of who was the running back?
The back of Najee Harris.
Najee Harris's back, and the guy picks it off his back and goes 102 yards the other way. That blew me away. Real quick, Ray Boom Boom Mancini on the board this morning. Can you turn our mic levels up just a tad, Ray? So now we could get to the controversial call at the end of the second quarter going into halftime where they had 1 second left. And, I know this is a rehash type thing, but if that doesn't go to review to see where that clock is at, there's no way they get that kickoff.
Right.
I honestly think that Alabama kind of got robbed on that play. I mean, this is the way it normally runs. They put 1 second on the clock. Okay, that's fine. But the ref stands over the center, and then he calls ready for play. Then you have to have the play. That takes a second off right there. There's no way you're getting that off. There's no way they're getting that kick off.
No, they're not, and because when you go back and you look at that play in itself, it was hard to even determine, if the player was still moving at the when it went down in 1 second. So
there was 2 or 3 players there.
Exactly. So that's why I'm trying to figure out how did the referee, even with the review, how did they go back and overturn and put another second on the clock?
It's not what determined the game.
Right.
We could be clear on that. But that was 3 points.
Right.
Alabama lost by 3 points.
Right.
And Saban was going absolutely ballistic on the sideline.
And he has every right to do so.
I think he does too. I don't even want to hear Auburn fans writing in and telling me, that it was legal. They overturned it. There's no way you get that snap off with 1 second. He calls ready for play. He winds the clock. Then he steps away. Right. There's 2 seconds right there before you can snap the ball.
Exactly.
And there was probably only a fraction of a second.
Exactly.
After the review. It's, again, it's not why they lost the game, but this game was amazing. This is why I love college football. It had every single thing that you would love in a college football game except one thing.
What is that?
Defense. I mean, you want to talk about no defense in that game. And that was fine. I like it. I like a good played game. It doesn't have to be a defensive struggle. So Saban goes off on that call, rightfully so. We have Jim Harbaugh snapping on one of the reporters asking, hey, what is the gap? Is it a coaching gap? Is it a player development gap? Is it a play calling gap between you and Ohio State? And he says, I'm not going to answer that. I feel insulted. But the one that stood out to me as far as coaches' rants was Clemson goes into South Carolina, does a toe tap on South Carolina's head, 38-3. Right. That game was never even close. So Clemson is in the playoff.
Right.
They're going to play Virginia in the ACC championship game. Virginia is a solid team this year. They're not like a free spot on the bingo board. But is there any way you see Clemson losing that game?
No.
No way.
No, I think Clemson has something to prove in that game.
I think so, too. And you know what? I might have them at my number 2 in the country.
Right.
And I think a lot of people just have, LSU as a default setting because they play in the SEC. And I get that.
Right.
I get that. Like, all the Notre Dame fans at the beginning of the year that were talking about how great they were going to be and they're going to go on a run. And I said, well, let's put Notre Dame in the SEC West for about 10 seconds and see how long they last.
Right.
Because that's a funny joke. They had a hard time yesterday in the first half against Stanford. But back to Clemson. So Clemson gets a very convincing win. And afterwards, did you see Dabo Swinney kind of going off in his press conference?
I didn't understand it. What was going on?
I mean, you won, you're in. That's it.
Exactly.
So what is the venting about?
I don't know. Coaches they kind of remind you of somebody who just like to fuss, just to hear himself fuss at times, I guess.
He doesn't have to prove a point or make a statement. They're undefeated. If they win next week, they're in.
Right.
Right. So what was the statistic you were giving me before the show that Clemson is in the top 5 offensively and defensively, right?
Defensively, yes.
In the country.
In the country, the only
right.
team.
That's why I say, I don't think it's a wide margin between LSU and Clemson right now.
Right.
In fact, I think those are clearly the top 3 teams that have separated themselves.
Right.
Those are the A-plus alpha teams that have separated themselves in college football. And then when we start talking about, well, who's going to be 4, 5, and 6, well, then we start having a discussion because you could throw Utah in there. You could throw Georgia in there. You could make an argument for Oklahoma. And here's the thing. What if Baylor beats Oklahoma next week?
That's going to be interesting.
That gets interesting.
Yes.
What if Utah wins and Oklahoma wins? I don't want to be one of these guys. Like last night at 1 a.m, I couldn't sleep, so I was just scrolling through YouTube, and there's 9 million guys out there just like us that have an opinion, but they'll talk about him for hours and hours and hours. And the funny thing is like some of them had like 5 and 6 viewers, and I know it's 1 a.m, but come on. Right. I don't want to get into all the scenarios, but a 1-loss Utah, a 1-loss Georgia team, a 1-loss Oklahoma. How about a 1-loss Baylor team? Baylor beats Oklahoma. If Oklahoma wins against Baylor, I think that they've got to get an edge, obviously, right there. I can't even see Georgia beating LSU. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but let's get into that one. Georgia beat Georgia State yesterday, or Georgia Tech, sorry, in an absolute whitewash game. And my Twitter is connected to a lot of Georgia fans who, I understand that they're fans, but their offense has got to get turned around.
Right.
I'm not going to say it's been terrible over the past 5 games, and I'm not counting yesterday's game. Hit pause if you're about to write in and tell me about how Georgia put up 57 yesterday. It was Georgia Tech, so just alto right here. Right. But Georgia's defense is literally 4.5 stars.
Yeah.
And this is why I think Georgia has a chance, is because LSU's defense is average.
Right.
Average. I'm going to guess the spread is going to be around 12 points, though. I don't know what it is, but that's the sense that's coming to me is LSU by 10 or 13 points. And I think it's going to be an interesting game. Their offense has got to rise up, though. I don't have a lot of confidence in Jake Fromm, even though he's a good quarterback at managing a game. And I'm not bashing Jake Fromm. But the proof is in the pudding. I mean, you put up, against UK, you put up 21. You only put up 17 at home against a South Carolina team that's mediocre at best. Right. And then you've kind of been marginal the last 4 games, putting up 20 to 25, 27, 28, whatever. Their offense has got to step up in this game. And I think that their defense, Kirby Smart is a defensive guy. Right. He's a solid head coach who can recruit and get his team ready. This has to be a statement game for Georgia, I believe.
Well, Georgia has to play a more control-heavy offensive style when they play against LSU, because LSU can actually go down the field and score within seconds.
Right. And here's the big concern. DeAndre Swift's shoulder injury, we don't know how bad that is.
Right.
So let's just say he's 100%. Mm-hmm. Let's just assume he's 100%. Can Georgia keep it close enough without weapons on the outside that are very, I don't want to say Heisman-esque.
Right.
But, Jake Fromm, I think, is a C+, B- quarterback in college football. Their wide receiving core, I'd give them a C+. Their running backs, I would give them a B+ or A- in their running game, just because of DeAndre Swift.
Right.
Their defense, I would give an A- to.
Right.
Is that enough to overcome LSU? Because you know what you're getting with LSU. They're just going to boat run you with their offense. Yep. And their defense is going to be, okay. C+ I would give LSU's defense a C+. Coaching, I would give them a B+.
The issue that Georgia's going to find itself running into is you have a player like Pickens who decided to get into a fight yesterday and take himself out the first half of the game.
Right.
So
stupid play.
Again, so now you have a weapon that set out the first half of the game.
And you can't afford that.
You can't afford that.
How can Georgia keep it close?
They have to be able to run the ball and Jake Fromm has to be more accurate with his passes. I mean, you look at his passes yesterday. I think he was like 16 or 18 for 18 or I forgot 30, 36 or something like that for 234 yards and 4 touchdowns. Okay, fine, you have 4 touchdowns, but you still have accuracy problems.
And it was against Georgia Tech.
And against Georgia Tech.
And LSU's going to put 7 or 8 guys in the box.
Exactly.
And I think they're going to try and stop Georgia's run.
Exactly. So it has to be on Jake Fromm, and Jake Fromm has to take advantage of that, and he has to make accurate passes.
Yeah, I think this comes down to a 24-13, 24-17 type game. I'm just trying to find the path that Georgia can take schematically, game planning, to get past, LSU's offense. I think it's going to be a whale of a game, but I just think that LSU is going to have too much, and it's going to be a combination of LSU's offense and Georgia's lack of offense. Right. If you're a Georgia fan, you got to be hoping right now that something comes up in your offense that hasn't been there most of the season, so we have a different result, because they're good for 25 points a game, and that's probably not going to get it done. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but that's how I see the game as a 24-13 type game.
It does. It just depends on how close the game is. If Georgia's able to keep the game close going into the fourth quarter, I can kind of start to see that the edge kind of lean towards Georgia because it puts pressure on LSU to actually try to score to try to pull it out. So, I mean, the closer the game is in the fourth quarter, the more I give Georgia a shot.
You know, one of the greatest teams in the country that nobody spends hardly any time talking about is Utah and I think Oklahoma. Yep. Oklahoma hasn't gotten a lot of press. Bedlam goes off yesterday. They beat Oklahoma State 34-16 and at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, I used to like them. I don't not like them now, but they're just a solid 8 and 9, 10 win, team every year. They're never going to be in the playoff, which is sad because, I like the mullet.
Right.
But they're finishing their season 8-4, and they're going to go to some middle-of-the-road, bowl game that has 40,000 people there, and that's kind of sad for Oklahoma State fans. The good news for Oklahoma is they get to the Big 12 championship game, and they're going to play Baylor, who absolutely took Kansas to the woodshed yesterday, put up over 60 points. I think Baylor's going to be ready for Oklahoma. I think that's going to be one of the marquee games next week that I actually want to sit in front of and see.
Right.
Because I love Jalen Hurts. We know when we talk about Oklahoma, it's got to come down to defense. Their defense has got to find a way to stop Baylor. And I know they won a couple weeks ago, or last week, a couple weeks ago, whatever, at Baylor. But I think this is a tight game, and it might be one of my teaser specials. I don't know how this game could literally go either way. That's how good both these teams are.
Yeah, it could go either way. And, when you're looking at this Baylor team, Baylor is a very underrated defensive team. A lot of people, when you look at the Big 12 and you look at defenses, you don't really think of defense at all for any of these teams. But Baylor, out of these Big 12 teams, Baylor seems to be one of the most solid defensive teams out there. And so, I think if they're able to keep Jalen Hurts, under control somewhat.
Yeah.
Like I say, somewhat.
Right.
I think they have a shot to pull it off and pull off the upset over Oklahoma.
I think it could happen too, and I don't know how much of an upset it would actually be. So let's look at our top 4 or 5 teams in the country right now. Number 1, I've got to have Ohio State. I'm putting LSU at 2 by a razor's edge over Clemson. And then we get to... So I'm going Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, and then we come to number 4. So when I look at 4, I think, okay, I've got Georgia in the mix. I've got Oklahoma in the mix. I've got Utah in the mix. Give me your top 4.
Top 4 is still going to remain the same. I have Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, and Georgia. Still top 4.
Georgia by how much over Utah and Oklahoma?
I have Oklahoma. Actually, I have Utah at 5 and Oklahoma at 6. And so when you're kind of splitting hairs between Georgia and Utah.
Yep.
And so I'm just giving that slight edge to Georgia.
Does it work itself out next week?
I think.
I think let's say Georgia loses.
If Georgia loses, then yes, it work itself out.
Now, what if Oklahoma wins and Utah win?
Oklahoma and Utah win. I'm looking at their losses.
Utah lost to a USC team.
Who's actually came home and ranked, right?
Finished ranked in the top 20.
And then you look at
on the road,
right? And then you look at that loss that
Oklahoma lost on the road to Kansas State, who's a solid team also. The road.
On the road too, but
we're getting into that.
But this.
There's nothing overriding.
This is the difference, though.
Okay.
This is when I'm looking at the difference when it comes down to that loss. When you look at that loss against when it comes down to Oklahoma, they were down. I mean, Kansas State gave them the business.
Right.
They came back.
Right.
But Kansas State ran for almost 300 yards on Oklahoma?
Oh, they ran all over. But so that's going to be the margin of whether you get that one factor in one game, or you look at the whole body of work.
I'm looking at the whole body of work because the
Pac-12 is not as good as the Big 12.
No, but then again,
competition-wise, so I can throw that. Just devil's advocate, not arguing.
No. But then again, you have to also look at too. Let's see. So Oklahoma will be what? They'd be 10-1 going against another 10-1 team.
Mm-hmm.
So
See? And then Utah's playing a two-loss Oregon team.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's going to work itself out. That's what I'm believing. I think that it works itself out, especially if Oregon gets it done against Utah.
Yeah.
Everything works itself out. If Georgia does now, if Georgia beats LSU, they have to be in.
They're in.
Even if Oklahoma wins and Utah wins, Georgia has to be in.
Yeah, Georgia be in, but depends on the margin of that LSU. That knocks out.
No way.
That depends on the margin of that game. So
you're saying if Georgia? I'm saying if Georgia wins, that can knock LSU out of the playoff.
No
way.
No.
So you still have LSU, Ohio State, Clemson. And if Georgia wins, they have to be in.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
The margin of victory doesn't matter. If they win by 1 point over LSU, they have to be in.
Right. No, what I'm saying is like even if LSU was to lose that game, LSU still is going to find a way to be in there simply because
look who they beat.
Look who they beat. Exactly.
So
that in a sense kicks out the Pac-12 and the Big 12.
Yeah.
So
it's got to.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to demise Utah, but again, let's put Utah or let's put any of these teams that we're talking about in the SEC West.
Right.
They're not walking out with one loss.
Well, I mean, really, when you look at that team, if you look at putting them in the playoff right now, either one of those teams,
Utah or Oklahoma?
Or Utah, if you look at putting them in at that 4th slot, which one of those top 3 teams are they beating? I don't see them beating any of them. I don't see them beating Clemson.
No, but I don't see Georgia beat any of them.
Exactly.
Right. So it's like 3 teams that are up in the stratosphere, and then you have to come back down to earth, and you have a bunch of teams like Bama. Like Bama plays Georgia. I think that's a close game.
Right.
So you got Bama, Georgia, Utah, Oklahoma. I don't know if I'd throw Baylor, Penn State. Then you start getting into 2-loss teams.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that second tier is Georgia, Alabama, Utah, Oklahoma, and maybe Minnesota. But they lost so bad yesterday, I can't even put them in there.
Exactly.
So I didn't even know. Manny. Manny's in the studio. Come here, Manny. I didn't even call him up there.
Okay, come here, Manny. Come here. Manny. Come here, buddy. Come here.
Get him up on your lap.
Come here, buddy.
I didn't even know Manny was in the studio. He's hiding under your chair the whole time.
Right? He's like, come on, Manny.
He's too tired. Hey, if you want to be a part of the show, you could do like Manny and just yawn, or you could write us here, email into the show. It's thefirstrroundrd@gmail.com. We've taken some intelligent questions the last couple weeks, some less than intelligent ones that we have still gone over, but and there was some cool commentary on our car show. My list and your list were very different. You went with some classics, and I went with some very high-end type cars, but it was good talking to people about that. Let's go to the NFL right now. Well, while we're on college football real quick, Florida gets by Florida State. That wasn't a question at all, and that caps off a terrible season. I don't even know if Florida State's going to go to a bowl game. They're bowl eligible, but if you look at – I mean, they really don't deserve to go to a bowl game, and this might be one of those things where you say, we're just not going.
I think they'll go simply because it's some of those seniors last time playing. So they'll go to a bowl.
This is also coming from a Florida State alum.
Like I'm saying, but it'll be a mediocre.
The bottom of the barrel. They're playing for the old bucket of spit if they're doing anything.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get to who you guys are hiring because you still need to find a coach.
Yes.
It doesn't seem like either Mike or Bob Stoops is interested. In fact, Bob came out and said, I'm not interested.
Right.
I don't even know if you want Mike Stoops, but I keep saying Kyle Willingham from Utah. I said that at the beginning of the season at game 0, Miami against Florida. I said, you got to get rid of Willie Taggart immediately before the season even starts.
Yeah.
Fire him now. Fire him at the end of last season. They didn't do that. So week 0, I'm like, fire him now. Any time is acceptable.
Right.
And I've said Kyle Willingham. There doesn't seem to be any direction going that way. In fact, we keep hearing Mike Norvell from Memphis, who is a second-tier coach. That's not landing a big fish.
Right.
And who else is out there that you could go after?
I mean, you're hearing so many different names right now.
But they're all second-tier guys.
But I'm with you with that. I mean, you're hearing James Franklin, but again, why would he leave? Why would he leave Penn State and go to Florida State? I'm just saying.
I know, but that's not going to happen.
Those are names that they're throwing out there.
No, they can throw out anything on message boards. And those are guys that aren't connected to the school and don't know what they're talking about. James Franklin's not leaving Penn State. I don't want to hear Brett Venables is leaving.
I mean, but those are the names they're throwing out. They said they're speaking.
Okay, let's talk reasonable, intelligent men
Right.
that are extremely good looking, like you and I are. Who are the realistic names out there if we don't have the Stoops on the table? The realistic, you could give me 2 candidates right now that as a Florida State alum, you go, I'd be happy with this hire and think that we're going in the right direction.
If it was my choice, I would take your coach from Iowa State.
See, this is what go. Okay, who's your other one? You get 2.
And I'll go with Kyle Whittingham from Utah. I mean, really.
Okay, so there's no noise out there about Kyle Whittingham from Utah at all. Nothing even on the radar.
Right.
I don't even see that happening. Just the intelligent GM brain that God gave me is throwing that out there as an option. I would throw some money at him, and that would be, I would think that that's a good hire. I could see him turning the program around. The head coach from Iowa State, that seems like a reach to me. Just like you said, it seems like a Willie Taggart reach.
Right, but
and how happy are you going to be with that?
Well, I mean,
because you're just going like this. Okay, our next head coach is gosh.
That's the thing. I mean, when you look at that,
he's going to bring you to prominence again.
He's the type of coach he has developed some type of organizational structure. Granted, he's playing.
We're at that level with Florida State, though. It's national championship or nothing.
But you have to. The thing is with Florida State, for years they've been lacking structure.
Right.
And I think a hard-nosed coach like that is able to bring structure.
What about Gary Patterson at TCU? Probably won't even be a blip, but no?
No.
Wow.
No, I mean, because you go back and you look at
it's a bad time for you guys to need a coach.
I mean, because you go back at exactly, it really is.
It's a bad time.
It's a bad time.
It just is.
Yes, I mean, because really, we go back to Florida State. Florida State is kind of almost like the Pittsburgh Steelers. We always have coaches for years. We've never been in this situation.
I know.
Bobby Bowden for like almost 40 years.
Yeah, I'm not even putting you guys down. If I was a Florida State fan, I'd be very concerned right now. Like, who are you going to bring in to change the culture, to bring us back? You got to rebuild this mess that is so bad that any good coaches, you got to pull them away from. If they're a good coach, they're in a great position. So you got to pull them away from a good position to come say, clean up our nuclear Chernobyl. I mean, who's going to do that? There's just again, I'm not FSU badge.
No. It's
not at all.
It's not that at all. When the whole Jimbo Fisher thing went down, I thought they would have brought in Randy Sanders, who was a Jimbo Fisher guy, who was the offensive basically the quarterback's coach, who has that the same detail-oriented that Jimbo has. But again,
not a big-name guy.
Not a big-name guy, but it's somebody who...
More of a coordinator.
He ended up taking a smaller job in North Carolina. So it's like you have someone there who has that structure, who already has that winning mentality from Jimbo. Bring him in to go ahead and institute that offense. So you have your core nucleus, you have your offense set, you have your offensive line. You just keep everybody there. I mean, Jimbo's just going.
I don't envy your position.
I just thought they mishandled the whole situation.
I'd be in mild panic mode about who you guys are going to bring in because, there's only 3 fish in the pond, and neither of them are big bass. So let's go to the NFL. I really don't want to get into the Cowboys a whole heck of a lot. I just think they're a dumpster fire. They play in one of the worst divisions next to the AFC East, which my Patriots are in. But you're 6-6 with that much talent. You got to look. If it's me as a reasonable, highly intelligent sports person, the blame goes on Jason Garrett and it goes on Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones meddles in everything. He is the GM, the owner, the CFO, the post-game analyst, the PR guy, the media correspondent. I mean, he's everything. It's just like ego. Do you know how many times I run into Cowboy fans? I mean, all the time. 2 or 3 times a week easily when I get out. And it's the same story. You know what I tell them? You're not going to win until nature takes Jerry Jones out of this picture. You're just not going to. I even told one of my friends this week, talking about, we're still going to make the playoffs and then we can go to the Super Bowl. No, you're not. First of all, the chances of Philadelphia winning that division are way greater than you guys. You have a lot tougher schedule. They basically have 4 games against a free bingo spot.
Right.
Philly has all the advantage. Plus, you have to go to Philly and beat them. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, you're not winning the Super Bowl. That's crazy. The Patriots had more playoff victories last year than Dallas has had in the last decade. The last decade. You've had 2 playoff wins in the last decade. Most of that under Jason Garrett.
Yeah.
So it's Jason Garrett has to go, and Jerry Jones has to do something that it's physically impossible for him to do as a human being, which is hire a competent person, which he's done in the past, and let them do their job. He ran Jimmy Jones out. He ran out Switzer. He ran out Bill Parcells, who's one of the top 10 smartest NFL minds ever.
Yeah.
Hire someone that's competent and then let them do their job. But he can't do that. And while he is still at the helm of the Dallas Cowboys, they will not win because of that. Look at all the talent they have. And you're 6-6.
Yeah.
Stupid. I don't even know where to put that.
And the thing is that he will not get rid of Jason Garrett. I'm like,
he will.
I'm like,
no, this is it.
You sure?
I'll bet you $100 right now at the end.
I hope so.
Within 2 days of their last game, whether it's in the regular season or a first round out in the playoffs, he is fired. I'm telling you right now.
I hope so. I mean, because I hear guys already, we're going to get Lincoln Riley as our next head coach.
Yeah, exactly. That tells you they know where it's at. They're not going to the Super Bowl. That's just stupid. That's kooky talk.
Right.
That's stupid kooky talk.
In Oklahoma.
Yeah. In other NFL news, I talked at the top of the show about my favorite coach, who's the carnival of insanity himself, Freddie Kitchens. I'm still trying to figure out how he's like the crazy southern overweight redneck high school football coach that got hired in the NFL. That's what Freddie Kitchens is to me. So did you hear about this, what happened this week? Or did you know about it before today?
Yes.
He goes out and puts on a T-shirt in public. A T-shirt, the head coach of your football team for the Cleveland Browns puts on a T-shirt that says, "The Steelers started it," referring to the Myles Garrett incident hitting Mason Rudolph. I mean, I don't even know where to, I can't, Chris.
Okay.
It's got to go to you. I can't.
First off, Baker Mayfield designed that shirt.
He only did it during a break in one of the million commercials that he made in the offseason. They had a little time off, and he took a doodle pad. That's the best joke of the year from you, man.
Yeah. Second off, if I'm the GM, I'm the owner of the team. Freddie Kitchens, we're going to suspend you for the rest of the year because that's just inappropriate. Inappropriate for a head coach. First off,
you have the face of the franchise.
Exactly. You have a situation that was it was serious.
Yep.
It could have resulted in somebody having definitely some permanent injury,
human death,
even death. Right. It resulted in not only that, but you have charges that are possibly getting brought up against one of your own football players on your own team.
On a human level, it's the stupidest possible thing that I've seen anyone in the NFL do in a long time. And the NFL has domestic abuse. I mean, there's a long list of stupid things that these guys do. Right. And everybody in society does them. It's just more amplified because they're in the NFL. Yes. But this, to look at that shirt and think, okay, I'm going to put this on. I'm going to go out and take pictures with fans. That's how it even got out. And, like, I can't. I just get to a point where it's so mind-bogglingly, galactically dumb that I just look at it and go, my brain just seizes up, Chris. It just seizes up, and I go,
and I understand it. It's just, to me, the coach seems more like a fan than he does as a head coach.
Yep.
I mean, you look at this team, and, you know, they're barely scratching the surface. I mean, granted,
you're trying to make the playoffs. You actually have a chance to make the playoffs.
That's what I'm.
Why are you doing stupid stuff like this? Like, where the mind that God gave you isn't even protecting you from yourself.
And that's the crazy point. It's like Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham just like rubbed their hands on his hand and said, "You are our follower." And this guy goes out to put something like that on. I'm like,
so
dude,
stupid.
What are you doing?
It's unbelievable. Patriots go on the road to Houston today in a big game for both teams. I don't know how much it affects the AFC picture if New England loses. Their offense is mediocre. I would say C or C plus at best.
Yeah.
And talking about the Patriots offense, Manny just decided to walk out of the studio, which I don't blame you, Manny. Houston, you know, I'll tell you, honestly, my fingerprint with Houston is I don't know what I'm getting.
Right.
I don't ever know what I'm getting. how it could be a road game with a lethargic offense and 17 players listed as questionable because the flu hit the Patriots this week, and you're given 3.5. That half point is a big deal against a team with a winning record. I don't know how that's possible. I'm not even going to pick this game. I hope the Patriots win. I'm going to leave it at that.
Hey, it's because you're going against this Belichick, and he's going against.
He's owned Texas,
right?
He's owned Houston since
you have Belichick,
past 4 or 5 years,
right? But you have Belichick, but then also you still. I mean, people can say what they want to say about Tom Brady, but it's still Tom Brady.
Yeah.
So
even if his arm isn't there, even if he doesn't have the weapons, he comes up and reads an offense, changes the blocking scheme, changes the play and then there you go.
Right.
It's their defense, though. Everything comes down to the defense with them. So let's talk about Baltimore. I think the marquee game of the weekend. Baltimore is at home against San Francisco. I can't wait to see this game. And something tells me 6.5 points. Look, Lamar Jackson is one of the top 3 players in the NFL, if not number 1.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to crown him the greatest player in the NFL. I'm also not ready to put Baltimore in the Super Bowl, which I've seen a lot of this week. I mean, let's remove our lips from the crack pipe. Just about right.
Right.
You still have to go and win a game at Gillette in the winter against the best head coach of all time. And you could say, well, we already beat you. Right, but you beat a decimated team who hasn't found themselves. They always come together, and you got to go to Gillette. That's the big thing there. But I think Baltimore has one of the top 2 or 3 best teams in the NFL. They have one of the top 2 or 3 best players. And something is still telling me I'm taking San Francisco very confidently with the 6.5 points. Their defense is just that good.
And they're playing Baltimore at home.
It's at Baltimore. Yeah.
I would take Baltimore simply because.
And lay 6.5?
Yeah, I would take Baltimore. The reason I take Baltimore is whenever you have that West Coast team that comes over to the East Coast team like that, they always seem to kind of start out slow. And if you look at this Baltimore team, I mean, they've been outscoring people in the first quarter.
Oh, yeah. It's just go.
Just go.
Who are you taking in that game?
And again, I'm taking Baltimore in this game.
Okay, let's go to MMA real quick, wrap up the show. Donald Cowboy Cerrone, January 19th in Las Vegas against Conor. Have you ever been out there for a Conor fight?
No.
I'm Irish. I used to be a Conor fan, but his potty mouth just turned me off, and he's such an arrogant person.
Right.
I can't. But I was out there for the fight against Jose Aldo. I went to the weigh-in. I have never seen a sports event with so much energy.
Really?
I mean, the whole town was just MMA dripping in Irish people. I mean, so many people were there for that fight. The weigh-in had 10,000 people at it. And I remember they started a train coming out of that MGM Grand Garden Arena, going through the casino. I've got video on my phone. And they're just chanting and singing and drinking and chanting and drinking. And it was amazing. So just the energy that's in a city that already is electric. I think this is going to be an awesome fight, a lot of intrigue. And I think the Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson fight that just got signed yesterday, I think that's also going to be a lights-out thing. But that doesn't happen until April.
Right.
The other one's happening. And so you got Fury and Wilder.
Right.
In February, and now you've got Donald Cerrone and Conor in January. I think that is a great lineup. What else, if there wasn't anything else, we didn't even talk NBA. We didn't wrap up the Deontay Wilder fight, one-punch knockout of Luis Ruiz, who is winning on all the cards through the 7th round and got one punch sent into a different time zone. What else is going on in the world of sports, Chris?
We have the NFL's worst nightmare to come true. We have an NFL player actually betting on football games. We have Josh Shaw, defensive back for the Arizona Cardinals, actually go to Las Vegas with some of his homeboys from high school and actually lay bets on NFL teams.
And he's been on the IR all season.
He's been on the IR all season long.
That's the stupidest thing in the world. I can't believe you're making so much money anyways. You just need that action.
I guess so. I mean, but I personally, I don't understand it. And then, they are trying to say that there was a miscommunication, a misunderstanding of the law that was laid by the Supreme Court. I guess that's going to be something that they're going to try to use.
Get the heck out of here.
Exactly.
That's stupid. What else is going on in the world of sports, Chris?
We kind of touched on it earlier with the whole Terrell Pryor situation. My advice for men: look, if it's after 12 o'clock and you're in a domestic dispute, go
to
home,
bed.
Go to bed, go to sleep.
Go to bed. Like Manny, he's under Ray Boom Boom right now, sleeping under the production.
Exactly.
What's the last story you got for us?
And then, final last story. I want people to understand there is a difference between actually racism. I want people to understand that situation. You have the situation where you had Anthony Anthony Davis go back to New Orleans. People boo, and people thought it was racist. That's not racism, people. They just don't like him. Okay, please.
There was comments that was racist.
Yes, people were actually saying that was racist. Please, people, there's a difference between racism and people not liking the player.
You're mad because he's a super great player and he left your team.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
Exactly.
Having said that, that music is a good escape for us. It tells us that it's time to wrap the show up and thank our support staff. The man on the board, Ray Boom Boom Mancini, my co-host. Joining me every week here in the St. Jude studios, Chris Roberts, for all of us here at the First Round. Thank you for joining us. Do us a favor. Tell all your friends about the First Round. Smash that subscription button. Give us a like. We try and do a good show every day, and you can be a part of raising us up to epic proportions in sports talk radio. We will be here Wednesday, guaranteed live with another entertaining show. Until then, for all of us here at the Sports Round, take care, everybody. We'll see you Wednesday night right here at 7 o'clock on YouTube.